gonna be bad, man. Retired UFC fighters have not been making good headlines recently. Just last week, Anthony Smith, who retired last year, got arrested, and the details are pretty bad to say the least. Anthony Smith is facing 3 felony charges for terroristic threats, first-degree false imprisonment, and first-degree domestic assault. From the Sarpy County District Attorney's Office in Nebraska, where this took place, they allege that Smith was involved in an altercation with his wife at a bar in Gretna, Nebraska, during which he reportedly threatened to, if she did not get into the vehicle and go home with him. And then he attempted multiple times to use the vehicle to strike her, which, is pretty insane. And then we have, of course, the big one with Dustin Poirier at the airport earlier this year, where on Father's Day, Dustin drank a little too much, got into an altercation with the flight staff when he tried to board his flight, which ultimately led to this now infamous clip of Dustin trying to square up with the cop that was called onto the scene. And unfortunately, these aren't unrelated incidences. When John Jones had that 3-year stretch where he wasn't fighting after his fight with Dominic Reyes and before he would return to fight Cyril Gane, he also had this very infamous moment with police officers. John Jones had been celebrating getting inducted to the Hall of Fame for his first fight with Alexander Gustafsson in Las Vegas before he was arrested for a domestic dispute with his wife and was clearly intoxicated. So much so that he full-on headbutted the hood of this police car during this exchange. Then you have Conor's many incidences in the public, from him launching punches in the club to his erratic behavior at press conferences, and in general just has completely just changed his behavior from what he had been known for, which was a very disciplined martial artist that was high energy, but at the very least energy directed towards fighting. So why do fighters just seem to lose it all post-retirement? A big reason fighters seem to lose their mind after retirement is a loss of purpose. We're going to be pulling from this Dustin clip from the Joe Rogan show because he describes post-retirement very well. But in this clip, I think the biggest thing that stuck with me is Dustin saying that he has been fighting longer than he hasn't, which is actually insane. Fighting is not just a fighter's job. It is 100% their purpose in life. Imagine a fighter's life. It's constantly getting better. Their diet, their training, their lifestyle, all centers around fighting, for the most part. In and out of training camp, for a lot of fighters, their life is centered around being the best fighter on the planet. And with fighting, there's a clear next step. Fighters in training camp are sharpening their skills and getting better at their individual martial arts, or cutting weight, or watching film. There's so much a fighter needs to do in preparation for a fight. And then even outside of training camp, fighters are either resting up or plotting on how they can get to the belt and what fights to look out for in their division that will get them there. And then even after fighters attain the belt, now it's a different mission of defending the belt, studying contenders, and making the most out of their title run for greatness and money. And then when this ends, this is all over. There is no clear next step for a fighter. The freedom to do whatever you want with no set purpose in mind sounds nice on paper, but oftentimes for fighters who always knew what to do next in their life, it's very scary, like Dustin puts it. That void of not knowing what to do gets into guys' heads, as we've seen with Dustin Poirier and Anthony Smith. I also think this is why a lot of fighters still choose to come back years later after their retirement, even though they're way out of their prime and have nothing left to prove. We literally just saw that with Conor McGregor. Conor, at 37 and looking like this, had nothing to prove at this point. The big question a lot of people had was, why was Conor even coming back in the first place? Because 100% he did not have to come back for money, unlike some people thought. He's Conor McGregor. Of course, he's going to get the bag, but that's not the point. He was the most paid athlete in 2021. He has so much money outside of fighting at this point, and he does not have to be putting his body into a training camp anymore. From what Conor has said, he really just wanted to prove to himself and others that he still had it. He was really out there trying to fight again because he wanted that purpose in life. And the same goes for Henry Cejudo. He had nothing to prove and achieved a lot in his prime and came back and had a horrible post-retirement career, not winning once in that time. When a large part of your identity is stopped all of a sudden, fighters get lost, and especially when that part of their identity is so violent and adrenaline-filled, retired fighters often take other routes to fill that gap. Alcohol does not pair well with a fighter that has lost their purpose. Dustin Poirier, presumably Anthony Smith, considering his incident was at a bar, John Jones and Conor McGregor all unleashed hell when alcohol was involved. Nothing can even come close to the adrenaline and cortisol spike that is fighting. These guys, under literally the biggest stages, are fighting a guy trying to rip their head off in front of millions. That gladiator adrenaline is probably unmatched to almost every other profession. The only thing that tops that is military service. Even John has drawn that comparison in this tweet, saying that him and his military buddies have struggled with the same types of things in their post-retirement, which makes a lot of sense. In this interview with former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan, he said he struggled with the adrenaline dumps. He was no longer in life-threatening scenarios and high-stakes missions. He was having a lot of trouble adjusting to civilian life with no more insane highs. So what did he do? He went to Colombia and got hooked on the snow. I can see the same kind of thing with fighters. Nothing in regular life can even come close to fighting another trained man in an arena in front of millions. The high from knocking out someone can't even compare. So I think a lot of retired fighters take the alcohol and probably more to fill that gap. And man, the lack of self-control from these guys is bad. It leads to trying to fight a cop at the airport, or allegedly trying to hit your wife with a car, or allegedly actually hitting your wife and headbutting a cop car and saying the funniest shit on Twitter.
Most power Twitter's ever seen.
Yeah, shit is not good when these guys take to the bottle. And it gets worse when you pair the bottle with brain trauma. CTE is bad, like really, really bad. And we really can't confirm if someone actually has CTE until they have died, but there will be writing on the wall, and it's in bold. Signs of CTE include mood swings and behavioral changes, specifically aggression and impulsivity. And again, when you pair this with alcohol that lowers inhibition, you get very bad results. And again, we can't say for certain if any of these fighters have CTE, but I mean, rewatch Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Really fun fight, but brutal for the brain. Same with Anthony Smith, especially towards the end of his career. He was just getting knocked out bad. I mean, 13 of his losses in his career came from knockouts. That's brutal. And I think one of the worst incidents of probable CTE was when Tony Ferguson was arrested for his manic behavior after he was ripping mirrors off the wall and breaking the walls, trying to look for people in them. So yeah, we can't confirm these incidents were CTE related, but when you paint the full picture, it becomes very evident that the mileage in their careers does not help them post-retirement. And so, unfortunately, this is the tragic tale of the retired fighter. A sudden lack of purpose eventually turns to alcohol to chase that high again, which eventually enables the probable CTE. And unfortunately, I don't think Anthony Smith, Dustin, or whoever is going to be the last we see from these guys. And I honestly don't know how to solve this issue. CTE and fighting being their entire life is the price fighters have to pay. But I also think fighters that have looked good post-retirement, like Michael Bisping, Dominic Cruz, Daniel Cormier, GSP, and Mighty Mouse, are very much possible because they found something after fighting. They became commentators or content creators or coaches and found a lot of success there. GSP continues to live a martial artist's life, and I think it looks really good for him, obviously. So it really just comes down to whether or not these guys have a post-fight plan that gives them purpose, which keeps them away from the bottle. Dustin Poirier has said many times that he thinks post-retirement is scary because he has pretty much no purpose outside of that, or he really hasn't had to think about that. And I think the same goes for a lot of these fighters. It's unfortunate because they retire relatively early in their life, right? Most people retire at 65. These guys are retiring in their late 30s. That's a lot of time to try to find purpose, or on the flip side, a lot of time to think about how you don't have purpose. So I just really hope that these fighters post-retirement have some sort of game plan in order to have some post-fight career and have some purpose in their life, because unfortunately, it often ends up like this. So what do you guys think about the topics in today's video? Kind of dark and bleak, but it's unfortunate that we're seeing guys like Anthony Smith and Dustin Poirier act this way post-retirement, and hopefully they'll be able to find some sort of purpose. I mean, they were commentators in the past, and hopefully that grows and gives them more purpose in life, but it is kind of depressing to see your favorite fighters go down this path. But anyways, what do you guys think about today's video? Thank you guys for always supporting. I actually really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.